One of the other things that we have found is critically important is reading the notes. In my case, I don't know how widespread this is, but I know a lot of hospitals, a lot of medical organizations use something called the EPIC system to capture information, to handle all of kind of the back end office work.
Which gives you access to read it.
That feeds something in our case that's called MyChart. I don't know how many people have access to MyChart, but that's what I use, and I'm able to pull it up. I'm able to ask questions. I'm able to schedule appointments. But the most important thing is I'm actually able to see the test results. I'm able to see the doctor's notes, and specifically the clinical notes that they put into the EPIC system, so that they keep track of what's going on with my health. So they keep track of what's going on with my cancer. It's critically important to read those things, because in one case, I was actually able to discover my own recurrence before any doctors made me aware of what was going on. We had to go to the emergency room.
Yes, and we were in a small town at that time, a very small town. Our town had 350 people, so it was very small. So we had to drive to a town about a half an hour away, and we went to the emergency room, and we were there for about 6 hours, and they came with a diagnosis that he had pneumonia. And I was so surprised, because I have been around pneumonia and I know the symptoms, and I didn't see any of them. But
I remember when I was there, they did all sorts of diagnostic reports. They did x-ray, which I kind of expected. They did a CT scan.
it seemed like a weird thing for
It
pneumonia.
did. It was, yeah. And so anyway, there was a CT scan, but ultimately we were sent home. It was a few days later that I was reading through the reports, including the radiologist report, and there was a line that referenced a mass in my body, and it said probably the known transitional cell carcinoma. Well, nobody told me anything about cancer in my body. Nobody told me or suggested that there might be a recurrence or anything like that. I discovered it myself in the notes, and that's when I escalated it to my urologist, so this is the middle of year. This is like June or July. And the next time I would have seen my urologist was January, because at that point I'd been cancer-free for 4.5 years. And so I was only doing annual follow-ups. This was kind of at the half-year mark. And so I feel that had I not read that report, I wouldn't have known until I had my follow-up appointment in January, when I went to my regularly scheduled urologist visit.
So we don't know where that could have went, but we were very thankful that he found that in the notes.
So another example of why it's important to read your notes, your medical records, is one time I was going through the clinical notes after a meeting with a urologist. I normally read just kind of the summary for each of my doctor visits, and I had discovered an area that was in fact clinical notes. That was new to me. Turns out that it had been on all of my EPIC reports, all of my MyChart reports, but I had never read it. So anyway, a newly discovered area, newly discovered section that was showing me the clinical notes, and I was going back through all the various doctor visits. And I kept seeing this one area, this one segment that said something about genetics, and then had kind of this alphabet soup. It was a bunch of letters. I can't remember if there were symbols or numbers or anything like that, but it was just like 3 lines of just gobbledygook. And I thought, well, this is really weird. And so I sent a message to the doctor's team and asked what it was. And they said, oh, well, those are the results, or the summary results of your Foundation 1 report. And it's like, well, what's
the Foundation 1 report?
Yeah, what's a Foundation 1 report? Turns out that it is a report of, it's a genetic testing results or report. Well, I knew that my doctor had requested those, and my insurance company declined to cover the genetic report, the genetic testing report. And so I just dismissed it.
Yeah.
I figured that, okay, well, that's not available to us. And
Move on.
Yeah, we moved on.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when I discovered this and found out it was a Foundation One report, I said, well, gee, can I get a copy of the Foundation One report? And they said, sure. And they sent it to me. I looked at the date that it had been generated or that it had been requested, and it turns out it was a year or a year and a half earlier that that they had run, which I think it's odd that even though my insurance company denied it, either there was an appeal or the doctor's office went ahead and ran it anyway, or
We don't know.
Don't know what happened.
To this day, we don't know.
I know that we didn't end up paying for it. I don't remember seeing it come through insurance. It just, kind of miraculously showed up. But I got a copy of the report. I started reading through the report. And one of the things that caught my attention, it was like a 20-page report, but one of the things that caught my attention was this section that was talking about FGFR3, which I don't know what that stands for. It's this huge word that I could probably never pronounce. But it talked about FGFR3 and how there are chemos that specifically targeted cancer where FGFR3 was present. And so I started asking about that. And my doctor said, oh, well, yes, that actually qualifies you to use this other drug called erdafitinib. Mm-hmm. And so everything got set in motion so that I could do this erdafitinib. And as I started treatment, it very quickly started shrinking the tumors. And in fact, it took me into remission and kept me with, I don't know if remission's the right word, but that's the word I use.
No visible signs of cancer.
No evidence of disease, NED. And so it took me into remission for roughly 9 months before the cancer started progressing. And then I was able to get approved to participate in a clinical trial for a drug that also targeted FGFR3. And that has now kept me in remission for approximately a year. Mm-hmm. So almost, a year and 9 months, pushing 2 years of no cancer because of discovering that there was something available that targeted, or chemo available that targeted FGFR3 that I may never have known about had I not discovered it in my chart notes by reading my clinical notes, by reading my medical records. So definitely encourage you to read your medical records.
And if you don't want to read them, have someone that you trust read them.
Absolutely.